Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Now to my first guest. Next Friday night, I'll be sleeping out in aid of Focus Ireland, and I hope that many of you listening to this morning's show will join me in raising funds for the commendable work undertaken by the not-for-profit. Pat Denegan, the CEO of Focus Ireland, joins me now to discuss the homeless crisis in Ireland and to highlight the work of their organisation. Pat, it's almost time for the annual Shine a Light fundraiser again, and we'll be discussing how our listeners can get involved next Friday night. But first, homelessness was something that might have fallen off people's radar last year with COVID-19, but how grave is the problem in 2021?
It's still a massive problem, Cara. At the moment, the official numbers would say that we have over 8,200 people homeless in Ireland. They're broken across about 953 families, and they include about 2,189 children at the moment across the country. So it's a major issue. And a major issue that we're particularly concerned about coming out of the pandemic, which hopefully is now behind us and some of the restrictions are being lifted. What we saw during the pandemic and during the time of COVID was that the government introduced a number of really important emergency measures which had a really strong effect in the right direction in reducing homelessness. And those were mainly around things like a temporary ban on evictions and a rent freeze. But what we've seen most recently, when those restrictions were lifted and when we've gone back to a more normal rental market, those homeless numbers are starting to creep up again, and that's our great fear.
Now, of course, you also mentioned the point about rent freezes coming in during the COVID pandemic, but is it too late at this stage for a rent freeze because they're just gone too high?
I think the level of rents is extremely high. There's no doubt about that. And, you know, we're just at the start also of the government's recently published strategy around housing for all. And the answer to homelessness, as we've said before, is to find people homes. And to do that, we really need an extra supply of housing and to make sure that, you know, that housing is available to people right across the country. So more housing, more homes, more apartments. That's really what we need to address this, along with the supports to keep people in their home.
And Pat, just on that very point, what are your thoughts on the Housing for All strategy that was recently published by government?
Well, we've welcomed the Housing for All strategy. We strongly welcomed the thrust of it and the approach of it. We really believe that one of the most important elements within it is the government setting an objective of ending homelessness by 2030. And that's a really fundamental thing from our point of view and something we've been campaigning for a long number of years. I think if we don't have an objective of ending homelessness, then we'll continue the approach which has been managing the crisis. And that's really important. I think the other aspect that I would point to is that the time of the restrictions and the time of COVID, we've had a very strong level of partnership from right across the sector, right across the local authorities, the HSE, TUSLA, the state and the NGOs have come together in a huge way to really act very strongly in removing the impact of COVID from the homeless population. We need that same level of partnership to address the homeless crisis and the housing crisis in this country. What I would say also is that I think while those objectives in Housing for All are very strong and very welcome, we need to hold the government and others to account in delivering on them and make sure we have a concrete plan to deal with it between now and 2030. So
what specifically are you concerned about with regard to the delivery and the implementation of that Housing for All strategy?
I think Focus Ireland and others have listed a number of the challenges, and getting to, first and foremost, there's a target of an average of 33,000 homes per year being delivered. But that's an average. At the moment, we're on about 20 to 21,000 homes being delivered across the country. So getting to 33 is going to be difficult, but getting beyond that to make sure that over the course of the strategy we're at an average of 33 is going to be even more difficult. And making sure that we have the skills and the ability to deliver on those homes, to making sure that we have the the planning permissions and everything else in place to deliver to those numbers is going to be vital.
And of course, in relation to the housing assistance payment, commonly known as HAP, is that part of the solution or part of the problem? Because I hear a lot of criticism being levied at that in relation to the formula that's used.
You could view HAP in both ways as being part of the problem and part of the solution. I think in the short term, it's probably the only solution, because at the moment, until we have a sufficient supply of housing under development and being released into the market, then we need to continue with the whole process of HAP and the whole support HAP supports in place. But in the long term, I think everyone would see that the supply of housing should remove the need for HAP in the future.
And Pat, as an approved social housing body, what are the key blockages in the system affecting you?
I think the key blockages that we see as an approved housing body and as a housing provider is really around the whole planning process and the development process. It simply takes a lot of time to put in place a new housing scheme or a new housing development, and making sure that you're working through the various public procurement aspects, you're working through the concerns of neighbours, you're working through the whole planning process. Takes a lot of time. And that time is replicated for each individual development around the country, and we see that as being a key issue that we have to address as a nation.
And so, on that basis, Pat, what could be done to fast track this particular process?
I think that certainly the fast tracking of planning, the fast tracking of the consultation process, the fast tracking of the whole development and procurement process would be really, really useful. I think also added to that, I think we do need to fast track the provision of skills. Coming from the time of the Celtic Tiger going away, a lot of the skills that we had in the building industry and construction industry, the trades that have really developed through there, have simply been eroded and have gone away. And we need to make sure that we're bolstering those resources very quickly.
Well, that certainly sets the context of the issue at hand, and it's a major issue currently. Now, of course, one of the primary objectives of Focus Ireland is to prevent an individual from becoming homeless. So how do you achieve that?
Prevention is better than cure, as lots of people have said. And really, we want to prevent someone becoming homeless because it takes away the trauma that homelessness can cause, the trauma of losing your home in the first place. And when we try and work with the individual at an earliest point possible to try and make sure that they can meet their obligations to their landlord, for example, if that's what it happens to be, that they can maybe make a better fist of making ends meet, introducing them to things like MABs and people like that can help with household budgeting, working with them to make sure they understand their rights in the whole tenancy area, but also their obligations, and making sure that that people act as good neighbours in the community. So there's a myriad of different ways that we can do that, and we try to do it on a case-by-case basis. It's something which we see as hugely value for money and hugely productive, because if you can keep someone in that home, you're removing the possibility of them moving out to emergency accommodation, you're removing the possibility of them having to look for another home and all the difficulty that causes.
For those then that unfortunately do find themselves homeless, how does Focus Ireland be of assistance to them?
Well, in a number of different ways. What we work with families and individuals, we work with young people and older people up and down the country. And the idea is to try and find them a home, whether that home is in local authority housing, whether it's in an approved housing body like our own, whether it's in the private rented market. We try and find them a suitable accommodation, and a suitable accommodation that they can integrate and build into the community. We have, as I mentioned earlier on, we have about 1,200 homes ourselves up and down the country. The idea is to make sure that those homes are just the same as any other home, and they're not identified in any or stigmatised in any particular way, which is, we believe, the absolute right way of doing things.
And like all not-for-profit organisations, fundraising is critical for Focus Ireland, and next Friday night, the annual Shine a Light Sleep Out will take place. Tell us about Shine a Light.
Certainly, it is. Next Friday night on the 15th is Shine a Light Night, as we're calling it. It's actually the 9th year, Carl, of Shine a Light, and it started out in a very small way. It started out based in trying to attract business leaders to come and experience homelessness and to learn about the issue of homelessness, and it's developed from there, and it's developed right around the country. We have 3 hosted business leader events, one in the Law Society in Blackhall Place in Dublin, one on Spike Island and one in Limerick. And we are really thrilled yet again that Bord Gáis Energy have come on board as our key sponsor for this. It's the 3rd year of their sponsorship, and they're a huge part of what we do. But I suppose, like a lot of things, Carl, we've learned from the pandemic, and some of those things have been good. Last year, we weren't in a position to hold a hosted event, and what we asked people to do was to sleep out in their homes and gardens and their balconies and everywhere else, and they did in their droves. And what we'd like to do is also, apart from having the business leader hosted event, we'd like people to join us on sleeping out in their homes and gardens and backyards and all the rest of that, and engaging with us on social media and engaging in the night to learn more about the issue, to raise some money for it if they can, and also to participate in the night to learn about to have an awareness of what the issue and how it can be solved for the future.
Pat, it's important to highlight that all money raised will be used to address homelessness in our locality.
That's right. That's right. The two-pronged approach that we have in dealing with that, and we've set ourselves a target of raising 1.5 million on the night. The two-pronged approach for that 1.5 million is to be used in prevention services, particularly in prevention services for family homelessness, but also to make sure we have what we call a sustained exit. If you've fallen into that trap of homelessness, that we can get you out of it, we can provide you with a home and provide you with the supports to stay out of that trap. Really, our message is family homelessness is something which is a blight on all of us, and we need to address it as soon as possible in order to prevent the trauma that attracts to that and help the children who are falling into that place as well.
And finally, I would encourage all of our listeners to support this very worthy cause, but how can they get involved?
Well, Carl, people can get involved through our website, which is shinealight.focusIreland.ie. Shine a Light is all one word. But to join us on the night, to either sleep out or to make a donation and to help out on the night and participate in social media to build awareness of the issue and give us your support, we would really appreciate it.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Pat Denegan, the CEO of Focus Ireland, and I do hope that the business community will get behind this very worthy cause on Friday next.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Carl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.